So, fantastic. Here we go. I'm gonna make sure my screen works here. See if I can share this with you guys. And here we are. Can everybody see my screen okay? Let's see. Okay. I'm going to take it that everybody can see my screen. I'm really excited to share this with you all today. This has been a culmination of a lot of work. It actually started about a year and a half ago when I stepped onto this agroforestry system in Thailand. But without further ado, I want to tell you about ReForestry, where we're building the future of investments in climate resilient agriculture communities using artificial intelligence, decentralized finance, and NFTs. So what we're looking at here are two young gentlemen several years ago working in finance and very much motivated to, climb the economic structure as it's built and approaching life from a very sort of left-brain masculine approach, getting things done. And we, after several years and some success, we kind of hit this wall. And even though we didn't know each other at the same time, my co-founding partner and I, we hit this point in our lives where we wanted to find greater meaning and purpose in life. And so we took a pause from these careers and we just set off on this quest to reconnect with ourselves. And we did that through nature. We found ourselves through nature. We set out traveling more than a dozen different countries, hundreds of thousands of kilometers. And through reconnecting with nature and visiting these remote areas, these different climates, these geographies, these different cultures, living and working with smallholder farmers in some of these instances, we found like this whole new way of living and relating to nature. And through these experiences, we're able to integrate, the feminine and the masculine together in a more integrated, holistic approach of how we can live in harmony in a way that is ethical and profitable in harmony. So in this experience, as we were traveling, what we came to realize was that fundamentally our food and timber systems are at risk. We kind of had this like wake up moment where it's like, wow, like there's actually a lot of beautiful things here, but there's also a lot of issues. And we saw that, just in the last 50 years, statistics are telling us 70% biodiversity loss, farmable land degradation, 50%. We're seeing 80 million people joining our planet every year, and temperatures are increasing around the globe, exacerbating more climate disasters. And so we're like looking at these issues and we're like, wow, this is pretty sizable. And then what's happening is we're seeing that smallholder farmers are sitting kind of at the center of this. There's this massive market demand. I mean, when you look at just Africa, $30 billion timber deficit, food demand has doubled in just the last 10 years. And again, these smallholder farmers, 570 million of them with their families, we're looking about a quarter of the world's population that's responsible for producing up to 80% of the world's food production. Yet these populations are often the most vulnerable to climate change. And in these low to middle income countries, we're seeing this issue where it's like, well, can't we just help them improve their farming systems? And there's a lot of different issues that we started to encounter. We were seeing how they're simply not investment ready. You're not able to scale investment and transition development of these areas easily. So we're looking at these different issues and figuring out like, well, how can we solve some of these issues using, as technology continues to advance, like there's got to be some solutions here. So we continued to dig. And then like through this process, we uncovered that, the market growth for artificial intelligence and blockchain technology, whether that's using artificial intelligence for continuous optimization or blockchain for transparency, we saw this opportunity where maybe there's something here where all of these problems are starting to piece together this kind of greater ecosystem where there's a solution. And that's where we wanted to see how can we help scale investments into the transition to regenerative agriculture for these smallholder farmers. And this is where we came to agroforestry. At the center of this, these systems that we were looking at were like these subsistence and monoculture farming models. We can transition them year by year to more diverse systems that help farmers become more climate and market resilient. Whether a commodity price fluctuates on the market, there's the eggs are shared in different baskets. There's not everything in one place, all invested into one single crop. So if that crop fails, it's not an issue so much when you have this diversified portfolio of crops. And at the same time, giving these farmers access to payment for ecosystem services such as carbon revenues. We were seeing as we were building our financial models that farmer financing on the front end tends to be heavier, and over time that financing amount lessens. But then over time we're seeing carbon revenues and the yield income increase, and we're transitioning these farms from subsistence monoculture farms over to these diversified income, these polycultural systems. And so this is where we're now looking at how can we develop these kinds of systems? And that's where Bertrand and I, we had to develop a program. And this is where we built this agricultural decentralized finance program. And at the core of this program is our modular API platform. This is what's pulling data from a lot of different databases to help us in our decision making. It feeds three different pillars: our asset management, our wealth management, and then our lending and underwriting. This allows us to service farmers with financing for inputs. And then it also allows us to help buyers have access to sustainable commodities. It allows us to help investors have access to ethical, profitable assets. And then it allows laborers to have access to equipment and then also training programs. So through this integrated agricultural decentralized finance program, we're actually finding ways where we can leverage asset-backed non-fungible tokens using blockchain technology for the real assets that are in those farming systems. That collateral allows us to provide ESG bonds to those investors financing this mechanism. So when we look at, okay, here we have a program, what are the tools that we're going to use to have this work? This is where we are building out 4 different applications. For the smallholder farmers, the apps will provide them crop guidance, a marketplace for selling their products. It will also provide them with input financing, a labor pool, carbon revenue and payment for ecosystem services, and training programs. The farmers are able to define their objectives, their personal and financial objectives. Through the app, the farmers are able to select farm systems that are generated by our farm prediction models. They're able to get financing and life cycle support through the app as well, and then earn yield on their savings. When we look at the local labor app, they're having access to a job pool, equipment financing, and a training program. They're earning money for farm tasks that they complete. They're accessing training programs. They're financing vehicles and equipment that they need to complete the farm tasks. And they're also earning yields on their savings. On the investor side, they're getting access to ESG bonds, impact NFT and trading pools. They're getting access to impact and risk management reporting. Investors are able to choose their risk profile and rewards and watch their investment impact grow over time. Investors are receiving risk management reporting and they're able to speculate on real impact assets. Buyers, through their app, have order traceability. They're able to transition their farm suppliers over to regenerative farming practices and also have ESG reporting. The app allows them to trace their orders. It simplifies order management and it reduces their supply chain threats while allowing them to share their sustainability story. So we have these apps. Well, that's fantastic, but what's driving all the decision making behind these apps? This is where we had to build a very holistic model, inspired through the adventures of my co-founding partner and I. We saw that there's this system where we have to first focus on the biosphere. We look at biophysical risks, create a scorecard, which feeds into the social layer, where we're now looking at social risks, feeding into the economic layer, looking at economic risks. We compile these risk scorecards into our triple bottom line model, which essentially provides us with a farm system prediction tool and lending decision. This profit and risk scorecard all of this data that's feeding into this creation is through an API network that's connected to these world-leading databases, and then it's analyzed by our artificial intelligence. So it's great to have data coming from all of these different sources and using that information to provide better decision making. But our focus is not just about grabbing information from scientific databases, regardless of how prominent and reputable the organizations are. It's also important for us to have an element of empowerment and collaboration with the communities that we work with. And this is where our model of community empowerment places the algorithm at the center, where local communities, through user feedback, we can leverage local and indigenous knowledge, pulling that into the algorithm, as well as all the bioeconomic data that's coming from these different databases. With the information that's coming from these local sources, as well as these bioeconomic data, the algorithm continues producing profitability and risk predictions, which are influencing the technology platform, the apps that the farmers and the laborers are using. Through this self-improving algorithm that's assisting the farmers and the local laborers, the community pool is then able to have access to more jobs. They're able to earn more income. They're able to increase the ecosystem services provided by their community, and they're also able to access more training. So how does all this make money? Well, we're looking at, with the farmers, we're financing them for their inputs. We're charging a risk-adjusted fair interest rate. The local labor force, we're financing equipment for a risk-adjusted fair interest rate. We're also providing them access to a job pool, kind of like the Uber economy or DoorDash, these gig economies that are accessible through apps. For every job or farm task that they complete, there's a transaction fee. Buyers are able to access sustainable commodities, where we charge a purchase transaction fee, as well as a supply chain traceability fee. And then investors are getting an asset-backed ESG bond, and we are earning a percent of the profit share above the hurdle rate. Now, we're about to head over to East Africa. We're getting ready for a pilot program where we will be restoring 500 hectares, impacting the lives of 1,000 farmer families. We have a 3-week feasibility study scheduled. We're going to be working on 3 highly demanded areas where we're looking at oil, biofuel, and then timber. We have a $325 million signed intent to purchase with our buyers for oil palm, for several different species of timber, and then also corn, which will be used to turn into biofuel. In total, we've got 8 species signed already, and we're really excited to be heading out there. So right now, like, how does this compare to the rest of the market? Well, when we're looking at the ecosystem of what we are doing, there's really no one that we found that's quite doing it like us. The closest thing that we did find was Komaza. They just recently secured $28 million in their Series B. But overall, when we look at the pension fund size investment landscape of smallholder regenerative agriculture, this is a very early and relatively untapped market. When we look at these two different sides, centralized agroforestry, these industrial, privatized large plantations, oftentimes are much more ready for pension-sized fund investment. But on the other side, when you look at decentralized agroforestry, these smallholder agroforestry systems, oftentimes in low to middle income countries, they're difficult to organize. There's all of these risks, and there's no integrated risk management strategy. This is where, again, like our integrated agricultural DeFi program manages all of those risks and provides scalability into these kinds of systems, which places us up in the top right-hand corner, where we would be ready for pension-sized fund investments for decentralized agroforestry systems next to Komaza, though we're focused on agroforestry, not monoculture timber species. So very new, untapped area. When we look at our team, I'm glad we have my co-founding partner here on the call with us today. And so we're coming from a background of a lot of diverse corporate and startup experiences. Bertrand has had some fantastic, successful experience with some financial technology startups, some of the biggest ones in the world. Myself, I've worked on some of the largest environmental projects and programs around the world as well. And we've just taken on our director of engineering, Dan, who's a former IBM, and we're about to sign on our Director of Risk Data Science, who's coming from Social Finance and JP Morgan Chase. We've also been receiving assistance over the last year or so from some engineers and scientists that have been helping us with software engineering, as well as agricultural consulting, and then forestry economics and modeling with more than 40 years of combined experience working for some of the largest organizations on the planet. And so, you know, when we're looking at our path to development, what we're seeing right now is we're going to be building these 4 different apps out: the farmer app, the local labor app, the buyer app, the investor app. As we are building these apps out over time, these apps are going to be connected to our cloud infrastructure. There's an API network that's pulling information from all of these different databases. This information, as it's coming into these databases, it's feeding our machine learning algorithms, which are improving our lending and bioeconomic models to help us manage profitability and risk more effectively. What's happening is we'll be launching a pilot program first in East Africa and working on validating our proof of concept, where we will then later launch a pilot program in Latin America. About less than a year from now, just 12 months, we'll be reaching up to 625 smallholder farms, or 500 hectares. And then what will happen is we'll be scaling that up by the end of 2022 to more than 2,000 smallholder farms. And by the time we reach our Series A, we'll be ready for 5,000 hectares, 6,250 smallholder farmers. So this is our roadmap that we'll be looking at, our stages of development. Now, what we're looking for right now is we're actually opening up our seed funding right now, where we'll be raising $10 million. 5.5 of that will be in senior debt. We've got 1 million already committed in first loss equity. There's a 500 hectare proof of concept facility that we will be developing to demonstrate risk-adjusted returns for investors, to cover costs such as planting, that includes seeds and propagation, operations, which will include trainings and monitoring, other costs such as crop insurances and management. We will be following up with additional SPVs to the tune of $35 to $50 million within the next 24 months. Now, on the equity side, we'll be raising $4.5 million. That will provide us with a 30-month runway to work on the product, like the risk analytics modules and the digital apps. It'll provide us with capital to build out our growth, having the 500 hectares pilot program be validated, and then scaling up to 5,000. And then our partnerships, procuring $1 billion in product purchases, as well as additional new integrations. We will be raising $12 million coming around to our Series A in 24 months, so we can accelerate the farmer onboarding process. Now, it's really important that you know even more about us, because we really identify as being a social benefit company. Our mission is to improve ecosystems and smallholder farmer livelihoods. Our vision is to tackle big problems through the use of our data analytics capability to help more than 500,000 smallholder farmer communities and buyers and investors, all in these supply chains, to collaborate more effectively with nature. Our values are about working with nature, thinking globally and acting locally, empowering instead of controlling, thinking fearlessly, and using integrity and restoration at the core of everything that we do. So thank you very much for your time. Please, join us. Let's enhance the human relationship with nature. We're going to be really happy to answer any questions that you might have now. All right. All right. Okay. So one of the questions that came up here is, what are one of the places that had a really big impact on where we, on where we are today? Bertrand, do you have an influence and inspiration, someone or something that's kind of, been influential as to, where you are right now in your journey? Maybe a person or a place that you'd like to answer to this question?
I think a person. I guess when I was a teenager, I used to be reading all the books from Mohammed Yunus, which was driving the Grameen Bank. And when I moved from France to North America to do a business school in finance, and I created an association there, and I built this program of work, which was the week of microfinance and introducing fair trade and all of this 10 years ago. And I was a lot into this, but somehow I went into the career of finance and I kind of forgot about it for 8 or 9 years until I decided to travel the globe on the motorcycle and reawaken those desires that I had as a kid that I had let go. So Mohammed Yunus is really a character that I respect, and the work that he's done has been very inspiring for me in my as a teenager.
Awesome. Yeah, man, if I had to choose one.
What are your main challenges?
Okay. Yeah. What are your main challenges regarding user experience with smallholder farmers regarding their adoption to technology use? That's a great question. What are your main challenges? So right off the top of my head, I would say that there are different demographics of smallholder farmers. There are some which are technologically illiterate. There are some that are completely illiterate. So the main challenges can change depending on which region we're in, which cultures we're dealing with. So main challenge that we're, in regards to user experience. So I'd say the important thing is regardless of like how complicated our products and models can be on the back end, that on the front end, they're as simple and as easy to use as possible. And also it really helps to show people by doing. I'm frankly, I'm a very visual person. I have to remind my partner of that sometimes. I can hear things and I can read things, but definitely my favorite way and my easiest way of retaining information is either by seeing it visually depicted or by doing it myself. So generally speaking, I notice that a lot of people that tend to work in the field that are spending less time on screens or in more academic kind of settings, we tend to be a little bit more kinesthetic learners. So it helps to have systems that are super easy, friendly to use, and then also having demonstrations. So regarding technology use, it does help to have some guidance, and then it also helps to set up a user experience that is making things streamlined and as easy and simple as possible. Yeah. Is there anything that you might add to that, Bertrand?
And the only thing I would add to that is the way that we think about building product or building technology is always from a customer-centered approach. So yes, we take a simple approach in designing, but then we make sure that we use focus group and we actually bring the smallholder farmer through the technology and watch them do it, and then learn from how they experience the technology so that we can improve, so to make sure that they have the right understanding. So the main point for us is just designing everything with the customer in mind and always designing for them for the best experience.
Yeah, and also having user feedback loops where you're engaging with the customer and finding out like what is working well and what is not working well, so that way you can actually revise designs and how things are working, so that way we can continue to optimize the experience for the users as well. Yeah. Perfect. Well, yeah, we're happy to meet and discuss. If you guys have any questions, you can reach us at ReForestry. We're happy, to continue conversations moving forward, and we want to thank you for your time, and let's build a better world together.
Yeah, thank you, Benoît, for this presentation. Thanks for everyone for listening in. And yes, today we're actually opening up our funding round, opening up the company to this investment summit. So come and talk to us, and we look forward to collaborating.
Yep. Have a wonderful week. Thank you. Bye-bye.